Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before starting the video, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button and give this video a flag up. The news spread like wildfire through the little town of Hope Valley. Beloved face, long thought gone for good, was finally making a return. Whispers floated through the cafe, the mercantile, and even among the children racing down Main Street. It was the kind of news that carried both joy and uncertainty, stirring up old memories, reigniting emotions that had once been gently tucked away. And for Elizabeth Thornton, it felt like her world was about to shift all over again. Hope Valley had changed over the years. It had grown not just in buildings and families, but in spirit. New faces had brought fresh stories, while old ones had left behind legacies that still lingered like echoes. Yet, in this calm chapter of the town's story, someone was about to stir the stillness. The return was not just unexpected, it was transformative. When Elizabeth first heard the news, she froze, her hands trembling as she read the simple letter that arrived at her doorstep one crisp autumn morning. The handwriting was familiar, the kind that tugged at the heart like a melody from long ago. As her eyes scanned the lines, disbelief mixed with joy, then confusion, and finally a quiet awe. "I'll be arriving soon. Hope Valley has never left my heart." Those words haunted her all day. Memories flooded back, the laughter, the shared tears, the dreams that had once been so alive between them. She hadn't realized just how much she missed that person's presence until this moment. Hope Valley was about to welcome home a piece of its own history. A person whose absence had once left an ache that time never quite filled. The whole town began to prepare, as Hope Valley always did when something important was about to happen. Rosemary Coulter, with her usual flair for dramatics, immediately began organizing a welcome gathering. "We need something special," she declared, her hands gesturing wildly. "Something memorable. After all, this isn't just anyone returning, this is them." Lee Coulter, ever the voice of reason, chuckled. "Rosemary, maybe let's find out first if they'd like a quiet return before you organize a parade." But Rosemary was already sketching plans for decorations, banners, and speeches. Nothing short of spectacular would do. Nathan Grant, the stoic Mountie whose protective nature often masked his deeper emotions, heard the news from Bill Avery, who delivered it with a knowing smirk. "Seems Hope Valley's about to have a visitor," Bill said, leaning on his desk. "Someone we haven't seen in quite some time." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "You mean—" Bill nodded. "That's the word." Nathan's expression softened for a fleeting moment before he quickly masked it again. "Well, that'll certainly shake things up around here." Little did he know just how much it would. As the days passed, excitement rippled through the community. Each conversation in town carried the same buzz. Faith Carter found herself reminiscing during her morning rounds at the infirmary, telling the new nurse stories of the visitors' kindness and charm. Even Henry Gowan, now a man trying to make peace with his past, found himself reflecting quietly at the oil fields, muttering, "Maybe some people really do find their way home." And then the day came. The train's whistle echoed through the valley along, familiar sound that always brought anticipation. Elizabeth stood at the station, her heart pounding in her chest. She didn't even realize she was holding her breath as the steam cleared and a figure stepped onto the platform. For a moment, time itself seemed to still. There they were, the person who had once been such an integral part of Hope Valley's heartbeat. Their presence felt both nostalgic and healing, like a missing chapter finally being written. Elizabeth's eyes glistened with tears. "You're really here." The returning figure smiled softly, their voice warm and steady. "I told you, Hope Valley never leaves you, no matter where you go." What followed was a flood of embraces, laughter, and stories. People crowded around the visitor, eager to catch up, to relive the memories, to tell them how much they'd been missed. Every street corner, every familiar face carried reminders of the time before, the joys and the sorrows that shaped the town's collective heart. But beneath all the celebration, there were deeper undercurrents, questions of why they had left, what had changed in their heart. and whether Hope Valley was still the same home they had once known. For Elizabeth especially, those questions cut close to her own journey. She had endured love, loss, and rediscovery in ways that had redefined who she was. Seeing this person again was both comforting and unsettling. Stirring emotions she thought had long settled. Later that evening, as the town gathered around the cafe for a welcoming dinner, laughter filled the air. Rosemary's decorations sparkled under the lanterns. Children danced, and the warmth of Hope Valley glowed brighter than ever. Yet amid all the celebration, Elizabeth found herself slipping away to the edge of the square, where she could watch from a distance. The returning figure soon joined her, holding 2 cups of cocoa. "Some things never change," they said, offering her one. Elizabeth smiled faintly. "And some things do." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the flicker of lantern light reflecting off the windows of the row of shops. They had both known for years. "I wasn't sure how people would receive me," the visitor admitted quietly. "After all this time, after everything that's changed." "You'll find Hope Valley always finds room for forgiveness," Elizabeth replied softly. And for homecomings, the words lingered between them, filled with unspoken meaning. In the days that followed, Hope Valley began to feel more alive than it had in months. The return of the familiar face seemed to reignite old bonds, heal old wounds, and inspire new beginnings. Henry Gullen found a new ally in his continued efforts to rebuild his reputation. Faith saw the visitor's compassion rekindling her sense of purpose. Rosemary, of course, couldn't help but insist on interviewing them for her upcoming newspaper column, calling it a return to remember. And Nathan. His reaction was perhaps the most complicated. While he respected the visitor and valued their history with the town, he couldn't ignore the way Elizabeth's eyes softened when she spoke to them. For all the progress he and Elizabeth had made in understanding each other, this return reopened doors Nathan had hoped were long closed. He tried to bury the feelings under his duty. But as he watched Elizabeth laugh with the visitor outside the schoolhouse one afternoon, a familiar ache tugged at his heart. Hope Valley might be big enough for everyone's stories, but sometimes love made the world feel small. Meanwhile, the visitor carried their own emotional weight. They hadn't returned just to relive old memories. They had come to make amends, to rebuild bridges they had once let burn. Whether through regret or longing, their journey had led them back to the one place that always called them home. As autumn deepened into early winter, the visitor began to reweave themselves into the fabric of Hope Valley life. They volunteered at the schoolhouse, shared stories at church gatherings, and even helped out at Lee's lumber company when extra hands were needed. It felt natural, almost as if they had never left. Yet late at night, when the town was quiet and the stars stretched endlessly over the valley, Elizabeth would find herself walking the familiar path near the row houses, lost in thought. Sometimes she'd see the visitor there too, sitting by the bench near the old lantern post where she once read letters from her late husband. It was there one evening. They spoke honestly about everything that had passed. Coming back wasn't easy, the visitor confessed. There were so many things left unsaid. "I didn't want to reopen old wounds." Elizabeth looked at them with gentle understanding. "Sometimes healing means facing those wounds again. Hope Valley has taught us that." They shared a quiet smile, both knowing the truth of her words. The past couldn't be changed, but the present could still be shaped with grace, forgiveness, and love. Over time, the visitor's return became more than just a story of nostalgia. It became a symbol of renewal, of what it meant to come home, to rediscover purpose, and to remind Hope Valley that its strength had always come from the bonds that held its people together. Christmas arrived that year with a special glow. The church bell rang joyfully, snow blanketed the streets, and the warmth of community filled every home. During the annual celebration, Elizabeth stood before the congregation to share a few words. "This year has reminded us that no matter where life takes us, Hope Valley has a way of calling us back to what truly matters: love, forgiveness, and family. And sometimes the heart doesn't just remember, it welcomes home." Her eyes met the returning figures across the room, and for a fleeting moment, the world felt perfectly aligned again, as the candles flickered and the choir began to sing. It was clear to everyone present that Hope Valley wasn't just witnessing a return, it was living a revival. A beloved character had come home, but in truth, it was all of Hope Valley that had found its heart again. The days that followed would bring new challenges, fresh stories, and perhaps even unexpected turns in the lives of those who called this town home. But one thing was certain: Hope Valley's magic, its timeless ability to heal and inspire, was alive and stronger than ever. And somewhere, under the vast starlit sky, the returning soul whispered to themselves, "I was lost, but I found my way back to where I belong."